Hello and welcome to Antonio Lamangi Fine Arts YouTube channel. Welcome, and today we're going to learn how to paint a beautiful hibiscus flower using oil paints. If you get value from this video, please like and subscribe. I really appreciate your support. The original painting will be auctioned on eBay at no reserve. Also, prints will be listed on eBay after the original is sold. If you're interested, click the link below. Let's go through our materials. Let's get started. Today we're going to be using the Arches watercolor paper. It's actually meant for watercolor, but if you prime it with gesso, you could use it for oil paint. Watercolor paper, you might ask. Why would we use that? Well, it is a 300-pound paper, which means it's exceptionally tough, it's thick, and you can put it in any picture frame. This stuff is expensive, but it is well worth it. The cheapest place to get it is on Amazon. Please check out my affiliate link. Why would we use such expensive materials? Because it's the best. It'll last you hundreds of years. Let's get drawing. You can use a carbon transfer, tracing paper, use a Lucy drawing tool, or just freehand it. Next, you'll spray your drawing with Krylon's workable fixative. Be sure to have a well-ventilated area. I suggest doing this outside. It's cheapest on Amazon and it works fantastic. Please check out my affiliate link. Okay, now let's talk paint. I'm personally using Old Holland for this video. It is my favorite paint because it is by far the best. It is definitely one of the more expensive ones, but if you're looking for the best, you're definitely going to get your money's worth. You may think that purchasing less expensive paint will save you money. That's not necessarily true. Old Holland has probably the highest amount of pigment per unit, and therefore you only need a small bead in order to paint large paintings. You will be absolutely surprised how far a little bit of paint will go. I paint daily, and I've had tubes last me over a year. Keep that in mind if you're using Old Holland. When you're putting the paint on the palette, you only need roughly about the size of a pea. You could always add more as you paint. I love using Old Holland because it is an archival material. That means that it is suitable for museum settings. The company has been around for several hundred years, and we know that their colors will hold up the test of time. In all of my videos, I only use archival materials. If you're going to make it, you may as well make it the last. The cheapest place to get it is on Amazon. Please check out my affiliate link. Now let's start the underpainting. An underpainting is when an artist makes a simple version of their painting first, then adds more color on the top layer. We're building a foundation for our painting. Artists typically start with a blank canvas. In this case, we're using watercolor paper. For underpaintings, artists typically use earth tones like brown, gray, or a pale color. That's not what we will be doing. I like to do things differently. I like to use the midtones from the colors that are actually in the picture itself. This method allows me to complete the painting with less hours and less color mixing. This is the easiest way to make complicated paintings, and anybody can do it. Let's go through the colors I'm using. I'm going to list my colors, but I'm also going to leave links and the names in the affiliate links below. Let's start with the opaque and semi-transparent colors. We have titanium white, Mars black, burnt umber, English red, Naples yellow, Scheveningen yellow light, Old Holland yellow green, permanent green deep, ultramarine blue, Scheveningen blue light, Scheveningen red light, madder crimson lake deep extra. As for the transparent colors, we have Payne's gray, transparent oxide red lake, Old Holland bright violet, madder germanium lake light extra, Indian yellow brown lake extra, ultramarine red pink, Scheveningen blue, and Scheveningen green. The list of the colors are in the description below. Currently, the cheapest place to buy the paint is on Amazon at the affiliate links. Alright, so let's get back to what's happening with this painting. I also use a little bit of white. I am careful not to use too much white because I do not want to mute the colors in this first step. Also, for some of the colors that are in a little bit of a shadow, I make sure I use the complementary color. In this case, I'm using a little bit of green, as well as a little bit of burnt umber. Let's start mixing our colors. Let's look for the major colors that are featured in the original picture. Taking notice of the warm colors on the petals of the flowers, we have yellows, oranges, and reds. On the leaves, we have cool and warm green. You'll notice that the cool green looks like it has more blue, and the warm green has a little bit of yellow, almost a little bit of orange. You'll notice that on the lower portion and the upper left of the picture, it's actually pretty dark. It's got a pretty dark shadow. On the upper right and the right center, you'll notice a gray color where it looks like some sort of reflective light or a distant light source. What I'm doing right now is I am taking special attention to see the characteristics of the image that I am attempting to paint. This is one of the most important steps for representational art. Representational art is when you are attempting to recreate an image that you see. I am intentionally starting with the darkest midtone in the painting first. That is why I am starting with the background and the shadows on the leaves. Take special attention to notice what colors I am mixing. I am attempting to find midtones, which means those are the colors colors that are not the brightest, but they're also not the darkest. In fact, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to find what's somewhat in the middle. As I'm putting these colors down, I'm making sure that I don't put them on too thick. I make sure that I don't put them so thick that I can't see my drawing, or else I might end up making my flower look a little weird. As I continue to put my colors down, I want to make sure that I make the painting intentionally blurry. This is an underpainting. This is not the actual final painting. As we get through more layers, we will make the picture progressively more sharp and more detailed. So let's be a little sloppy here because it'll actually make it easier for us to do the painting later. So when you put the colors down, make sure that you make them blurry. You want the image to be blurry. You don't want to lose your sketch, and it's okay to blend the colors into each other a little bit. It'll actually make it easier for you to get a little bit of a glow off of the light spots on the painting as you do the details at the end. Now that I've gotten some of the thin layers of color down, and you see me working out the details, trying to make sure that I have colors that fit the original picture that I'm working from, let's talk about value. In painting and color theory, value refers to the lightness or darkness of a color, essentially how much light it reflects or absorbs. It's one of the three core properties of color alongside hue, the color itself like red or blue, and saturation, which is the intensity or purity of the color itself. Value is critical because it helps create contrast, depth, and form in a painting. For controlling value with these different colors, let's be sure to understand the complementary colors. If you look at a color wheel, the complementary color is on the opposite side of the wheel. If you add a little bit of a complementary color to the color you're trying to use, you're able to darken the value and also mute it. So in many cases, it looks a little bit more realistic. For the parts of the flower that are in the light, such as the petals and some of the leaves, I'd be sure to get the darkest, most colorful color I can get. I do not get too light here. I just make sure I get the darkest, most colorful color. Those colors are mostly the yellow, the soft white with a little bit of Naples yellow, as well as the lighter green parts, and a little teeny bit of red that's along the bud and the top smaller flower. For the darker sections, I make sure that I go for the most colorful, lightest part of the shadow, because I want to make sure that I capture the color in the shadow. We could always go darker later. For the background, I mix two different values of gray. I put the dark value of gray on the upper left, and the lower right sections. For the lighter gray, I make sure I put it to the right center and the upper right section. If you want to add an earthy color to your gray, add a little bit of burnt umber. Not much, but it'll make it a little bit more warm. Now that you put your colors down, you're going to take a soft, clean, dry brush and gently blur the edges. Feel free to wipe it regularly with a paper towel to blur them. Blur the painting. Step back and make sure it's nice and blurry, and then your underpainting is completed. All right. The underpainting is done. Let's revisit the underpainting. Use midtones. Use the brightest color in the shadow. Use the darkest color in the lights. Make your underpainting blurry. The more blurry, the better. A huge tip that's helpful is that you might want to use a very large brush to put down your underpainting colors. That way you're not tempted to do any details. Hog bristle or synthetic bristle brushes are fantastic for this. There are brush recommendations in the affiliate link below. Check them out. I wanted to take a moment and introduce you to my new book. It's called Mastering Anatomical Figure Drawing in 4 Easy Steps. This is the easiest way to learn how to draw just about anything, but the book focuses on anatomical figure drawing, which is learning how to draw people. The book has a bunch of great features. It gives you step-by-step drawing in 4 easy steps. There's over 400 original hand-drawn illustrations. There is over 100 guided video lessons that are connected with a QR code in the book. There's a bunch of art history content, and there's an audiobook which has even more bonus art history content. Also, there's a bonus. There are guided worksheets that assist you with learning how to draw step-by-step. This book was designed to make drawing as easy as possible. Check it out. It's available on Amazon. Please check out my affiliate link below. Because you used an extremely thin layer, it will be dry within 3 to 7 days. In the next step, we'll be layering colors. Our goal here is to make the more extreme values. Darken the areas that need to be darker, lighten the areas that need to be lighter, correct color and layer for the desired effect, and sharpen lines that need to be sharp. In the underpainting, we used mostly the opaque paints. Even though they are opaque, it is still oil paint. That means it is somewhat transparent. And we focused on putting extremely thin layers of opaque paint down to preserve our lines from our drawing. In this step, we'll be using a lot of the transparent colors. I am intentionally starting with the darkest mid-tone in the painting first. That is why I am starting with the background and the shadows on the leaves. To darken the background and to make the flower sharper, I am using the Payne's Gray. I am also adding a little bit of earth tones with burnt umber. I am not adding too much because I don't want to make the Payne's Gray opaque. At this point, I'm using my number 10 filbert, but at times I switch to my number 9. Progressively, I go to a smaller and smaller brush to get down to more details. Even though it is relaxing to paint, I make sure that I'm not too tired while doing this. I want to make sure that I'm making good decisions to capture the values and the colors from the original picture. My goal here is not to make a photorealistic painting. My intention is to make an awesome painting that works really well with interior decor. This is my version of these flowers. So keep that in mind when you're painting your painting. You want to make your version of your flowers. Go through all of your transparent colors. Keep in mind that the more color you put down, the darker and more colorful those spots will be. Take a step back and take a look at your painting. Make sure it looks the way you want it to. Don't go too fast, and make sure that you are not adding too much transparent color. You can always add more, but it is more difficult to remove too much. If you add too much transparent color, it'll make the picture look like candy, like a transparent lollipop. If that's your desired effect for your painting, that's fine. That's not what I'm trying to do here. After you're done putting in your background, start focusing on the flowers themselves as well as the leaves. There are some important shadows that provide depth for the painting. The two different forms of shadows in this painting are cast shadows and form shadows. You can tell the difference between a cast shadow and a form shadow by how blurry or sharp the shadow is. You can start with your form shadows. What you're doing is you're making a gentle, blurry transition from the light to the dark. Make sure that you make your darkers noticeably darker so that you can tell the difference between the light and the shadow area. Paint the form shadow. Start out with the dark area, the darkest spot inside of the shadow itself, and then gently put less and less paint as you approach the light area. It makes objects look rounded, and it gives it a form, which is why it's called a form shadow. It allows the viewer to see the curves in the painting, such as the flower petals, the leaves, and the stem. As for the cast shadow, there are not that many hard cast shadows in this painting, but you will notice that there is the top left flower that is somewhat in the background is noticeably dark. That is a cast shadow. Let's talk about the details inside the shadows. We don't go too crazy with details inside shadows because not a lot of light gets inside there. That's what makes it a shadow. Your eyes will see more details in the lights instead of the shadows, but we still see some details in the shadows. We can see those details because of reflective light, but we can see some of the nice rich qualities of the inside of the flower. Now let's move on to the lights. We paint the lighter area using Naples yellow and titanium white. We mix these colors with the yellows and the oranges to show where the light is hitting the flower petals and the leaves. When you do this, do not use a lot of paint. When you are painting these areas, you are dusting it onto those spots. The goal is to make it so that you are almost dry brushing it into the lit areas. You don't want to put too much or else it's going to glob on. You don't want to have big blobs of paint. You will eventually do that, but not now. As we get further along in the process, go from the larger brushes to the smaller brushes. Gradually, you'll get to your smallest brushes as you start to do very small details. Let's revisit the paint and the palette. You will notice that I continuously use very small blobs of paint. They're about the size of a pea. It's better to use small amounts of paint and add more later. I'm using Old Holland, which is exceptionally colorful, and I don't want to waste the paint, so there's no reason to put huge blobs on the palette. To keep from contaminating my colors, I always wipe my palette knife with a paper towel. I also wipe my brush with a paper towel. I don't want to accidentally contaminate my colors, and I am very purposeful about which colors I put where. A common mistake that new painters make is they just want to jump into painting. They think that painting is literally placing the brush on the canvas and just making a mark. That's not true. The most important part of representational art is observation. You want to make sure that you take the time to understand what you're trying to paint. That means taking a lot of time actually observing the thing you want to paint. Observing your subject is very important, whether it takes you a few minutes or maybe even an hour to really look closely at what you're trying to paint. It really will pay off in the long run because you're going to get a good understanding of where your shadows are, what colors you want to use, and also if you're looking at it from the right angle. If you're working with a still life, you may change the position of the subject, or if you're working with a photograph, you may decide that the photograph you have is not ideal. You may look for a different one. We're going to use the opaque colors to make the darkest darks and the lightest lights. Here we're going to focus on making the most extreme shadows and the highest highlights. When you do this, less is more. Don't go overboard. You can always add a little more later. And the painting is done. This is one of my favorite parts. I love pulling the tape back because you get to see how the final painting looks. What an awesome piece. I can't wait for it to find a new home. This watercolor paper is awesome. It will fit perfect in any frame. Photography just does not do it justice. This picture is fantastic. I can't wait to show it off. Whoever wins this auction will love it. I can't wait for them to see it. I'm so glad I picked this picture. I love the flower. I love the colors. It's awesome. I love the oranges. I love the dramatic lighting. I also love the shape of the flowers. Now the painting is done. Now I move on to the certificate of authenticity. Every original painting comes with a certificate of authenticity. Every one of my certificates has an embossed medallion and an original hand-decorated wax seal. And to finish everything off, I sign it with my favorite fountain pen. This is a great painting. I can't wait to share it with the world. All of my my certificates are printed on this 100% cotton linen patterned paper. The paper is acid free and it will last the life of the painting. I believe this gives a lot of value to my painting because my intention is to make investment grade artwork. I want my collectors to be proud of not only displaying the painting, but also keeping and displaying their certificate. I love this thing. It's just super classy. Let's grab the old fountain pen and sign the artwork. I didn't put my signature on the painting itself, but I did sign the bottom of the front and I did sign the back. When signing the back, I make a habit of signing a little bit further up just in case the picture needs to be trimmed to fit in a frame. Now we have completed the hibiscus flower. I'm so glad you took the time to learn to paint this beautiful flower. Please let me know what you think in the bottom in the comments, and if you have any trouble painting your own flower, leave a comment and I'm happy to give you some help. Be sure to like and subscribe. Also, check out my blog, my gallery website, as well as the eBay listings for the original painting and then also the eBay listing of the prints. And if you'd like to see me paint some different flowers, let me know in the comments.